I find this exceptionally sad because, Lucas, you talk about how hurt you were and how offended you were by such despicable things, and then you became the thing that you found the most repulsive, which is alarming, and as I mentioned, deeply saddening. I would be more than happy to litigate some of Charlie's positions for you. I abjectly...
I don't think I need any litigation from a woman who tried to downplay slavery, who tried to all lives matter slavery after she purchased a black child. That's what I would argue.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Truth Review. I'm Hayes, and this panel exposed something worth breaking down carefully. When a creator pushed back against the conservative media apparatus and specifically named the double standard around mocking Black Death versus demanding reverence for their own, Jillian Michaels tried to shut it down by invoking her adopted daughter as a shield. The problem is Jillian Michaels has her own documented history of downplaying slavery using a badly misused 1860 census statistic, an argument that historians have thoroughly debunked. And when that record was brought up directly, the room turned into chaos rather than engaging with the actual facts on the table. Hit subscribe because Truth Review follows the documented record, not the deflection. Now let's get into it.
Well, that was a short watch. Number 2 is a mocked-up promotion poster called Kirk and Twerk at Neck of the Woods and hashtagged both Charlie Kirk and his widow. And the third was an image of a sunrise titled God Works in Mysterious Ways with the hashtag Charlie Kirk killing and praying hands as an emoji. And you're laughing as I show these. Why do you find this funny?
Well, let me just say that I actually am a big advocate for dark humor. And I happen to have gotten a bit of a taste of that over the last, I don't know, maybe decade or so when it came to the right and their memes of George Floyd, happy birthday being sober for 5 years. When they came to their memes of Breonna Taylor, when it came to their memes of Trayvon Martin, the Trayvon challenge, right? When it came to their memes of Tamir Rice. So I don't know what the issue is. I think I'm engaging in the freedom of speech that the right has been advocating for these last 10 years and mocking and making light of Black Death, something that Charlie Kirk himself did time and time again. As a matter of fact, I would argue that if Charlie Kirk, instead of focusing his time on Black culture and Black on Black crime, if he had spent a modicum of his time focusing on the white youth, that perhaps he would still be with us today.
Are you pleased he's dead?
No, absolutely not.
So how did you feel about his murder?
I don't think...
How did you feel about his murder?
How do I feel about his murder?
Yeah.
Well, I think a quote by a great author sums up the sentiment of millions of Americans around the world. And that is, some cause happiness wherever they go, others when they go. And I think that's a sentiment that is palpable amongst many Americans around the world due to the hate and vitriol and bile that Charlie Kirk sowed. So I think there was a pastor
just to be clear, unless I misheard you, then you are happy he died.
No, I don't think as far as happiness is an emotion that
you literally just read me a quote which implies you're happy. You talked about some people's death bring happiness.
The purpose of the quote was to say that there are some people who have caused harm and death and turmoil to other groups of people, such as Charlie Kirk, whether it's Black people, whether it's, trans people.
No, I heard the quote. The list just to be clear, you said that the quote ends in that their death brings happiness, but you've denied that you were happy. But when you tell me a quote
I don't disagree.
When you tell me a quote like that, I presume from that quote you're implying that actually you are happy he died because he deserved it. He had it coming.
No, not at all. I don't think those are ever words that I've ever mentioned verbatim ever. I think there is a sentiment that when someone who lives their life in evil and wickedness, according to the scripture, the power of life and death is in your tongue. And the hate and the vile and the venom that he spewed, I don't know what to tell you. As the scripture says, as he professed, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. I think his focus should have been on a community that, clearly is in problem. That I find it interesting that there's more scrutiny on people who may make memes that they've done of George Floyd and other Black victims than on the white male youth that did this tragedy, as some would call it.
Why would you be offended about the memes to people like George Floyd, which I found contemptible at the time, if they're the same ones that you're talking about? Why would you profess to be offended by those if you're quite happy to do the same kind of thing yourself.
I think the point that I'm making by the means that I'm putting out, which clearly has caused outrage and triggering, I find it a bit hypocritical that the people for years who said fuck your feelings are now overwhelmed with feelings at the moment. But the point that I was making was to point out the hypocrisy that the right has on a variety and myriad of issues, as we just saw with Pam Bondi on the freedom of speech. I think the issue is that they have scapegoated people like Pam Bondi for what is the crime of Donald Trump. The same thing they did with Anthony Fauci. We saw this when it came to the Second Amendment. They banned bump stock ban. They had a bump stock ban under Donald Trump while they were fear-mongering about Biden take away your guns. But as we saw, there was no outrage, there was no protest, and we come to find out that it was unconstitutional. So I think this hypocrisy is ubiquitous within the right, and I think my memes expose that hypocrisy.
And what about your own personal humanity? I mean, hashtagging his widow in a mocked-up promotion poster of Kirk and Twerk at Neck of the Woods. How do you justify targeting... Oh, well, hang on. How do you justify targeting his widow?
I think that's a bit disingenuous to use such hyperbolic language as targeting. I think it's more of a strategic plan of attack to get the message out to more people. When we saw Erica Kirk, she had a moment to speak for unity within the country, left and right, and she chose to fundraise. She then chose to use the scripture and talk, very nicely of her, past husband. And I understand that. But by that same token, there are people who were absolutely harmed by the rhetoric that Charlie Kirk put out. And that rhetoric actually codified in many cases in many states. So I think it's abhorrent and actually perverse to expect people who are harmed by his rhetoric, harmed by someone who had anti-black, anyone who wasn't white and Christian in his perspective. I think it's perverse to try and criticize those people or try and make them seem as if they're the bad guys when that's
but you see, funny enough,
I
can look at what you've done and I can see somebody who is abhorrent and despicable and actually evil. Actually, the stuff when you target someone's widow as she grieves and tries to protect
I disagree
her
with the
two
word
children.
targeting.
No. I'm talking about me. I'm talking about me personally. My view of what you've done. I don't care about your motivation in terms of other people's inappropriate memes, many of which I may well agree with you about. But that doesn't mean that I then go and do it myself or worse, because that makes me even more inhuman and abhorrent, and by your definition,
I disagree. I think there's
evil.
a point,
I know you disagree.
I'm just telling you. When it comes to Republicans, when it comes to conservatives, they have to see.
I've let you have your say.
I think I'm a mirror.
I've let you have your
what
say.
they have shown.
I'll let you have your say.
And if they don't like what they see, then they should actually detour from their wicked path.
I'm using your own justification to tell you what I think of you and what you've done. All right? That's my free speech at work. Let me bring in Jillian Michaels.
Agree.
I mean, Jillian, look. I saw Brian there nodding to some of what he was hearing there, not all, to be clear, but nodding to some of it about the hypocrisy which Lucas claims he is exposing with this stuff. What is your view of what he's said?
I find this exceptionally sad because, Lucas, you talk about how hurt you were and how offended you were by such despicable things, and then you became the thing that you found the most repulsive, which is alarming. And as I mentioned, deeply saddening. I would be more than happy to litigate some of Charlie's positions for you. I abjectly...
I don't think I need any litigation from a woman who tried to downplay slavery, who tried to all lives matter slavery after she purchased a black child. That's what I would argue. I don't think you need to as far as litigate anything. Would you like to discuss it?
Okay. Because the reality of the situation is that what I gave you, whether you like it or not, is a fact from the 1860 census. And the point is not to downplay slavery.
It is actually a bastardization of actual history. What you cited was inaccurate. You can actually look it up. I don't know if you did. I doubt you do your due diligence. You clearly did not, because in that study that you're citing, in the study that I'm discussing it right now, in the study that you're citing, it takes into account not only the slaves, it takes into account the northern states and the southern states. So to try and implement or to say this all lives matter when it comes to slavery, which is abhorrent and in extreme contradiction to American history, especially in this country as chattel slavery as Black Americans, is abhorrent and perverse, especially you, who is the mother of a Black child, who she purchased.
Right.
Other people
is my
died.
turn to talk?
You purchased.
Is it?
by all means.
How did I? Okay, well, I'm not quite sure what you mean by purchase. She's adopted, and it is illegal
Did you
to
pay?
purchase a child.
Did you pay to get that child?
No, I paid the adoption agency
It was
fees to do my
absolutely free.
hope study.
It was absolutely okay.
I
So
paid
then
the
there was a
adoption
process of
agency
payment.
like you
So then there
pay
was
to
a process
adopt a
of payment.
child.
I
To
believe
an
that
American
other people adopt. You
adoption
purchase.
agency. Okay, you're wrong, and that's defamation.
I'm literally
And it's
right
an
as you're
absolute
saying
lie,
that you
and
paid
it's-
to an adoption agency.
You're literally wrong, and it's this
I'm
kind
literally
of hateful,
correct.
You know what you are? You know what you are,
I
Lucas?
think what's
let me
hateful
just...
is you
Hang on,
downplaying
let me
slavery.
jump in
That's
here.
what I think is
Let me
hateful.
jump in
I
here,
didn't actually
Lucas.
downplay
Let me jump in
slavery.
here, Lucas.
That's
it seems to
literally
me,
what you did.
Seems to me, Lucas, you've decided to be just as offensive as you want to be. You're now attacking people who adopt children, which is one of the most selfless things that any human being could do, actually.
This is literally what
But
the
you-
right did to Dave Rubin, is
Fine,
it not?
Fine, but what you're doing is just trying to be as offensive as possible whilst masquerading under this umbrella of, well, everybody else is offensive, so that's why I'm doing it, to expose
Not
all
at
the
all, and I
hypocrisy.
think if that's
But
what I'm
Gillian
giving
is
off, I
right.
apologize
Gillian is
sincerely.
right.
What
that
I'm
actually
merely trying to
you
do
have descended.
is create
you
a
have,
better
the
world.
way you've
What
just
I'm
gone
trying to
after
do is to
Gillian.
unify
You know what,
people.
Lucas?
The
Stop
only way
talking.
we can unify people
Stop
is for
talking.
people to understand the
Stop
harms that they've
talking.
done.
You have targeted Gillian for adopting a child. That is despicable. Let me bring in
I
Riley
have
James.
targeted Jillian for adopting a black child after she downplayed slavery, which
Right.
I think is contradictory.
You attacked her for adopting a
adopted
child.
I mean, let's not
14 years
misconstrue
ago.
my words that I'm
So-
saying.
Oh, I heard your words. Let me bring in.
I
Let me
did
bring
too.
in.
Let's break down what actually happened in that panel, because underneath the shouting, there's a documented factual dispute that deserves to be addressed directly. Start with the slavery comment, because it's the center of this entire exchange. Jillian Michaels has previously made an argument citing the 1860 census to suggest something close to an all lives matter framing around slavery, essentially trying to broaden the discussion beyond the specific and documented horror of chattel slavery as it was practiced against black Americans in the United States. That statistic, when used the way it was, misrepresents the historical reality. The 1860 census data covers enslaved and free populations across different regions and different historical contexts, and using it to dilute or reframe the specific atrocity of American chattel slavery is not an accurate reading of history, it is a distortion of it. That's not a matter of opinion, something historians have addressed directly and repeatedly. Then there's the exchange about her adopted daughter, which deserves careful handling because adoption itself is a genuinely admirable and selfless act. And nothing about pointing out someone's factual inaccuracy on slavery should be read as an attack on the child or on adoption as a practice. The tension in that moment came from Jillian Michaels using her role as an adoptive mother of a black child as a rebuttal to a factual critique of her prior comments on slavery, rather than actually engaging with the substance of what was said about the 1860 census. Being a parent to a child of any race does not settle a historical or factual dispute, and using it that way sidesteps the actual argument rather than answering it. Now, to the broader hypocrisy point, which is the through line of this entire panel and the part that actually matters most. Turning Point USA, the organization Charlie Kirk built, has a well-documented history of content that mocked and diminished the deaths of black Americans, including George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Trayvon Martin. That's not a disputed claim. It's part of the public record of content produced and circulated within that media ecosystem for years. And it was defended at the time under the banner of free speech and dark humor being fair game regardless of who it targets or how painful the subject matter is. The specific defense used consistently was that sensitivity to this content was the real problem, not the content itself. That's what makes the reaction in this panel so worth examining. The same standard of free speech absolutism that was applied for years toward mocking black victims suddenly disappeared the moment the tables were turned, replaced instead with demands for reverence, decency, and respect. You cannot build a decade-long brand on the principle that dark humor about tragic deaths is protected free expression and then abandon that principle entirely only when it's inconvenient. Either the standard applies consistently or it doesn't apply at all, and pointing out that inconsistency is not the same thing as creating it. There's also the Pam Bondi and bump stock example raised in this exchange, which deserves its own moment of clarity. The bump stock ban was in fact implemented during the first Trump administration at a time when conservative media was simultaneously warning that Democrats wanted to strip away Second Amendment rights. When the Supreme Court later ruled that ban unconstitutional, there was comparatively little public outcry from the same voices who had spent years stoking fear about gun confiscation under a different administration. That's a factual sequence of events, and it's a legitimate example of selective outrage depending on which political side is holding power at the time. Subscribe to Truth Review. We follow the documented record. We call out factual distortions wherever they come from, and we hold every side to the exact same standard.